Here's a tutorial from last week's session where we were making the playing cards. I'm inside After Effects and I've got just the card artwork imported and I want to make these into two-sided cards as we were doing. So if I just start with the back of the card and drag that over the new comp icon, it makes a comp the size of the artwork. And I'll start by making the number 10 card. And so let's call this 10. To name it, you just select it, press return, and then type. Press return. So I need both of these layers to be 3D layers. And if I press switches and modes, I can turn them into 3D layers by clicking on this icon here. That converts them into 3D layers. And I want to have a null layer to control them both. So make the null layer a 3D layer and then make the back of the card shift click the artwork for 10, make those children of the null. Then if I rotate the null in the y-axis, at the moment I've got the same artwork backwards on the back and the front. That's because if I open the position value here for the cards, P for position, can you see that they're actually in exactly the same spot? So because the back of the card is on hierarchically in this list, is on top of the number 10 card, it appears to be on both surfaces. The way to fix this is to separate the two pieces of artwork by just one pixel. So if I select the artwork and send it backwards by -1 pixel, it should then, because they're no longer in exactly the same spot, they're shifted on the z-axis. So I've sent it backwards a little, and now if I rotate it, yeah, we've got 10 and the back. So that's exactly what we need. Let's make that 0 for the time being and just shut these down like that. So now we've got one, we can just recreate the others by duplicating this. So Command D to duplicate will make this the jack. Hit return or enter. Double click on the jack and substitute the 10 artwork for the jack artwork by selecting the 10 artwork in the composition and clicking the jack artwork, holding down the Alt key now to substitute one for the other. So now I've got the jack. Let's just rotate that to check. Okay, that all seems alright. Now I'm just going to go ahead and do that to all the other cards until I've got the 5 cards I need. So now I've made all of those comps with one for each card. Let's just tidy this up by creating a folder and call it card comps, and let's drag those comps into that folder. The more complicated things become. It's just easier to stay tidy as you work, otherwise you start to mess things up. So I want to make a new comp and bring these cards in and deal them like a kind of hand in a game of poker or something. So let's start by making a new composition, new composition, and let's make it HD TV, 25 frames a second, and duration's 200. I think that should be enough. And click OK. So let's start by bringing in the number 10 card, like that. And if I just rotate that card, I need to make it into a 3D layer, which is this icon here. If you don't see that icon, toggle switches and modes from that to that and click that 3D icon. At the moment, if I rotate it, it sees the artwork on both sides, and the way to fix that is to come here and press this icon, this sunshine icon, and that just collapses the layer. So what's happening is that before we press this, it sees only the top layer in the number 10 composition, but by collapsing the layer, it looks at that comp and sees that it has got two sides to it, like that. Okay, a front and a back. So I want to make sure that I can see the front. So let's make that 180 degrees, like that. It's going to start here. So if I hold down the Shift key and press P, I get the position values as well. So it starts there, position, come along to about frame 75, and it moves to here, roughly somewhere like that. And then while it's moving, we're going to make it rotate from in the y-axis from there to, by the time it's got here, we want it to be facing us. So that way, back down to 0. Just type it in, highlight the figure, type 0. So now it moves from left to right and spins as it goes. When it's in the middle of its kind of way along, I want it to be closer to us. So if I click on, this is the X value, which is side to side. This is the Y value, which is up and down. This is the Z value, which was in and out. So we want to click and drag on that number to bring the card towards us, like this. Okay, so now it takes off, lifts up, turns over and lands down on the other side. I want to do a little twist on the card as well as it lands. So let's say from the center, a little Z rotation. From the midpoint, if I come out to the end, at that point I want it to have twisted a little, like that. So takes off, turns over and lands. Okay, takes off, turns over and lands. I'm going to shorten the duration of this rotation so that the cards don't clash as they take off and land. I'll explain this in a minute. Hang on, just let me show you. How's that look? Takes off, turns over, lands. Maybe not quite that much. So now I've got my rotation, and it starts at frame 9 and it ends at frame 65, like that. My Y rotation starts at frame 9 and ends at 65. Because we're working in 3 dimensions, we can look at it from another angle. So at the moment we're just looking at it from the default camera, and we can look at it, let's say, from the top. So this is a bird's eye view looking down onto the card. Okay, there's the card there in its start position, there's the path it's going to take, and there's the landing there. So if I animate, just scrub along, you see it takes off, turns over, then lands. This is a bird's eye view of what we're doing. We're looking straight down on the card. So I'm going to change this. These are like Illustrator's points, these, so you can edit the shape of the curve. If I get hold of this handle, I want to lift it kind of straight off the pack, like that. Then to have it land, I want it to kind of slide more into position, like that. So goes straight up and slides down. Maybe this could be a bit further over. Okay, so let's have a look at how that looks now. From the active camera, lifts off, turns over, and lands. Okay, I think that's alright. That's okay. So, having done it to 1, we can just use those keyframes and again, so we don't have to go make another animation for the different cards. If we duplicate the number 10 layer, select the second layer, and let's make that the jack. So if I select the jack and hold down the Alt key while I'm dragging it over the number 10 layer, like that. So now they're both happening at exactly the same time, and we need to offset the animation. So if I select the 10 and I press U on the keyboard, it shows me all the keyframes of that layer. But I select the jack and do the same, press U on the keyboard, it shows me all the keyframes of that layer. I want to make this animation happen later, so I could just drag it along like that and it would start later, but here there would be no card there. It would suddenly cut on at that point, so that wouldn't work in this instance. We just want to shift the keyframes. So if I drag a box over all of them, and then click and drag until they start about frame 16, I think. Yeah, let's try there, see how that looks. So now card 1, card 2 takes off and lands, takes off and lands. Obviously it lands in exactly the same position as the other one, so we need to adjust that. So make sure that you just select the position value for the last keyframe. To get to the between keyframes, you can use these little arrows. They jump between keyframes. Okay, if you're trying to be accurate about what you're doing. So our position is not travelled quite as far, so let's drag it back a bit. It's also behind, can you see? Because it's underneath on the list. If we were to alter this position here, this position value, make that -1 again, that puts it in front of, in 3D space, it puts it in front of the other card. And this rotation, this little twist on the end, don't want that to be quite as much. Something like that. So it goes card 1 up in the air, card 2 up in the air, card 1 lands, card 2 lands. Right, let's do that again. Let's repeat that. So if I select the Jack and Command D to duplicate, then I want to, I'll just close that for a second. This is the one I want to replace. So select that layer, and I'm going to select it with the Queen. Click and drag. Holding down the Alt key to replace the artwork. Close the top layer, and now we need to delay the Queen. Select the Jack, press the U. So that one starts at 16. Let's try starting the next one at 2 lots of 16 is 32. Let's try starting the Queen. If I press the Queen, select the Queen layer, press U, and drag those keyframes along like that. And now it goes 1, 2, 3 cards like that. We just need to change the end position for the Queen. Deselect the keyframes by clicking anywhere. Make sure that you only click this last keyframe here to adjust the position. So we want to make, it's -1 at the moment, we want to put it on top, so make that -2 this time. One more. That should put the Queen on top. Drag her along a bit. And let's change this little rotation at the end too, so a little less. Something like that. Okay, so now it should go 1, 2, 3. Lovely. And now let's try it for the next one. So if I get now the Queen layer and duplicate the Queen and swap the second Queen for the King, click and drag, holding down the Shift key, no, sorry, the Alt key, just there. So now if we look at the keyframes for the Queen, select the Queen, press U, she starts at 32, 32 plus 16 is 48, isn't it? I think. So come along to frame 48. And they're the King. If I press U for the King now, that's where his keyframe should start. Just click a box to drag over all the keyframes. Click on a keyframe and drag to get it to the right time. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we need to change the end positions again for the King. So remember, click anywhere to deselect all the keyframes. Click on the last position keyframe for the King. Make sure that you're on the keyframe when you make the move. So it's -2 at the moment. If we make that -3, that brings the King to the front. Let's drag him back a bit. And let's change this rotation value. There. And now they should go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, when you look at this from above, actually, from the top view, can you see that my cards don't cut through each other 1, 2, 3, 4. If they were closer together, you can see that this card, if it was further along, would actually cut through that card there, and you'd see that in the animation. So be careful when you're kind of choreographing the cards that the offset is big enough that they don't touch each other or bash into each other. It gets very close there, doesn't it? Look how close that card is to that card. But you can, just by making the offset bigger, making the delay between them bigger, you can usually fix any problems like that. Okay, so then finally, if I duplicate the king layer, Command D to duplicate, select the king layer, and holding down the Alt key, drag the ace over the king. Now the king, if I press U, begins at frame 48, I think. 48 and 16, 58, 64. Come on, frame 64. That's where the ace needs to start. Select the ace layer, press U on the keyboard, and just drag over those keyframes. Shift them along like that. Now we need to change the end position, so come to the last keyframe, click anywhere to deselect everything, and just isolate the keyframe you want to adjust. Let's have a look at this from the active camera. We want that to come the uppermost card, so change from -3 to one more. -4 in the stacking order puts it on top. It doesn't travel quite as far. And the rotation, let's make that 0 this time. Okay. So there we have all of the cards now. All the cards go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's how that 3D animation of the playing cards. It's a bit advanced, I guess, for starting out in 3D, but you'd certainly learn a lot, I think. If we wanted to add some green to this for a background, we could just go Layer, New, Solid, and select a greeny colour. Okay, and then just put that right at the bottom. If you don't make it a 3D layer, it won't interfere with what you're doing. Okay, have a go. If you experience any issues, we'll look at those on Friday, okay? So that's what I was trying to do in our lesson together.